Today is the 28th of October, 2010. We are at the New York State Military Museum in Saratoga Springs, New York. My name is Wayne Clark. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth, please?
My name is Francis J. Capone. My nickname is Dicey. Everybody around here knows me by Dicey. I lived at 154 Elm Street, Saratoga Springs, New York, on the west side of town.
And when and where were you born? You were born here?
Yeah, in Saratoga.
And the date
Hospital.
Date of birth?
June 17, 1930.
Did you attend school here in Saratoga?
Yes, I did. I attended #1 school on Beekman Street, Saratoga. And I went to high school on Lake Avenue, just up the street from here. And I spent my year of high school there, my 8th grade year of high school there. And then I quit and I went to work on construction. My first job was Kesselring site when I first started working there. And the farm belonged to I forget now. Huh?
Heritage.
Yeah. Jake Heritage Farm.
Okay.
And they made it into the Kesselring site for Navy training. I worked there for a while, and Korean War broke out, and I went to service. I went to the Navy.
And you enlisted in the Navy?
Yeah, I took my physical at the Armory for the Army because I got a greetings from Uncle Sam, and I couldn't wait, so I went down to Albany and I tried joining other services, and the Navy called me first. And I reported January the 3rd, 1951.
Now, how old were you at that point?
I was 21.
21, okay.
1951, and I got out in November 1954.
Now, when you went in, where did you go for your training?
Great Lakes. I went to train in Great Lakes, Illinois.
Was that your first time away from home?
Yes, it was.
And what was your training like?
My training was great. It's mostly book work and stuff like that, and exercise, and see how many flags you can get so you get ahead of the chow line. So we tried hard getting our flags, and then from there I went to Norfolk, Virginia. The ship that I was supposed to report to was on a shakedown cruise, and we stayed at the barracks there for a couple weeks, but we tied up other ships. Like the Riskany was just going over to Korea, and I tried to transfer on that ship, but they wouldn't allow it because I didn't take my regular training.
Okay.
So I waited for my ship, and I got aboard it, and 2 weeks after I got there was in April. And from then I traveled different countries around the world. And
Now, you went through an on-the-job training program aboard ship?
yeah,
And what were you trained as?
I was trained as a boatswain mate, but a couple of the guys, we didn't get along too well. So they tried to put me on mess cooking to get me out of their sight. So instead, I put in for 15 days leave, and I came home for 15 days. So when I went back to the ship, they were looking for gunner's mates, and I love guns, so I put in for gunner's mate, and I become a gunner's mate.
Now, what kind of guns did you train on?
I trained on 3-inch 50s, 20 millimeters, 5-inch 54s, and small arms. I worked in the Armory too.
All right. Now, in the Armory, that was
That's where we had all our handguns,
small arms?
rifles, and mortars and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because aboard ship, you always have a group. They call them the landing party. In case you had to go ashore, we'd have a group with the Marine Corps and a couple other divisions. We'd go ashore and do what we had to do and come back to the ship. So we had to have small arms. And I did a lot of shooting with a 3-inch 50. And one time I had to go over to Dam Neck, Virginia with a bunch of Marines. I just got back from Korea, and they came aboard for their last year of service. It was like a goodwill tour type thing.
Mhm.
And I used to take them over and teach them all about the 350.
Mhm.
But then, one time I went over with these guys, and I had this gunny sergeant. And we used to call him Pappy because he was so old. He had chevrons. He had stupidity marks all the way from his wrist all the way up to his chevrons. We used to call them stupidity marks. But anyway, I said to the guys, tomorrow morning we had classes. Tomorrow morning we're going on a loading machine and teach you guys how to load. And this one Marine, he says, no, you're not going to tell me what to do. You're only a gunner's mate. I said, but I'm your boss. I'm your instructor. I said, I know what I'm doing. You got to know what I'm doing in case we need you sometime, So the guy comes over to the loading machine the next day. He said to me, he says, I'm not getting on that with all that cosmoline and everything. He's got his dress blues on.
Uh-huh.
I said to him, yes, you are. I said, I'll give you one more shot at it, because the Marine captain was a black guy, and he was in charge of us.
Mhm.
I said, if you don't come with your fatigues on tomorrow, I'm putting you on report. He said, you can't do that. And I said, you watch and see. So the next day he comes with his dress blues on. I wrote him up, give the slip to the captain. He made the guy go out that night and load for 2 hours with his dress blues on. So, that's the only guy in the Marine Corps, because I had him on my gun mount aboard ship for my loaders, and that's the only guy that didn't like me too well was the old man.
Mhm.
But he didn't last long aboard ship. He wanted to retire. But, there were different things that we did.
Uh-huh.
Like one time, we were at the North Atlantic, that's what it was, and we used to fly airplanes. We have to go into the wind for the airplanes to take off. And what happened one time, I was on Mount 31, that's on the forecastle, in the bow of the ship. And I'm about 65 feet up off the water, and the captain never passed the word, because he used to have to tell us, secure your gun mounts and get underneath the forecastle, because our gun barrels used to go higher than the deck,
Mhm.
and the planes would hit if we didn't get it down, the plane would hit the end of the barrel coming off the catapult. So they used to have to pass the word. This one time they never passed the word, and they made this turn to port. And what happened was, it was so rough that day that the water came up and took me and a couple other guys almost pushed over I thought it was over the side, and it banged me up pretty good. So anyway, a while later, after I got a sick bay, I don't even know how long I was in sick bay, and I went up to my gun mount. They took me off 31 and put me on 33, right in front of the captain and admiral's import cabin. So that was my gun mount now. And I was so sick, can you imagine having crutches aboard ship?
Oh my
and
God.
it's rough,
Yeah.
going up and down the ladders. So I was tired, so I went to my equipment room and fell asleep. So now Chowta comes along, and the commander of my division, they start calling for me. They wanted me down the gunnery office, ask me questions. So I never corresponded with them because I didn't hear them. I was in this place where there was no speakers or nothing, So anyway, I get out of this one room. As I'm going down the line I heard chow call, so I'm going down to eat, and everybody's hollering at me, where you been? What do you mean where I've been? They had man overboard drilling and everything.
Oh my God.
I said, well, I fell asleep, I had to go fast to go and see the commander, because I was his guy that used to fire on the starboard wing of the ship. We have ship to ship, some power phones. And I used to be the guy that used to fire the line over to the other ship.
Uh-huh.
And I knew the guy pretty good, called him Commander, And Commander Parrott says, what happened to you? Where you been? We thought you were over the side, I said, I fell asleep in the Appletine room. And he laughed. He thought that was funny. I said, I don't think it was funny. I said, because I was hurting going up and down with crutches on, you know. So anyway, you know what they wanted me to do? Sign off that I didn't get hurt. I said, I ain't going to do that. I was pretty well banged up.
Yeah.
And I got an arm right here. They got me in my DD-214 form that had a sprained elbow. I had a compound fracture of the right elbow.
Did you really?
Yeah. I had a big gash in my leg, the back of my head. When I was down sick bay, they had 3 chaplains. And I could hear them talking, but I couldn't see them. I know somebody was talking over me. I didn't know if I was dead or not. You know? But anyway, I went to try to claim this. Couldn't do it because it wasn't on my DD-214 form. They had me down for a sprain. I even had one of our congressmen go into the archives to see what they had there for me. They didn't have nothing. They just washed it right away.
Sure.
I still got it bad. I used to pitch hardball. When I came home, I started pitching underhand. So, anyway, I spent until November of '54 aboard ship.
Now, how many trips did you make over to Korea?
Oh, I didn't make no trips to Korea.
You didn't?
No.
Okay.
That happened in '54. What happened was, I don't know if I get the picture there. Well, anyway, what happened was that we had this carrier used to be a straight deck carrier. You could see where they...
Actually, if you hold it up against you, I can zoom in on it. Okay.
This carrier was a straight deck carrier. You either land them and fly them off the one end or the other, you know?
Uh-huh.
But when I got off the ship, they were going to take the ship around the Horn over Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Yep, you can put that down.
Because we couldn't go through the canal because it was too wide.
Oh, I see.
So we had to make the trip around the Horn. I was going to sign over for a year to take the ship around,
Yeah.
but I didn't because my mother was sick, and so I came home. But what they did was they put a cannon flight deck on the same ship. I got an old picture home. It shows just a streamline,
Uh-huh.
really nice. And they put 2 deck edge elevators on, plus they had one. They had the import elevators on the ship. Like one was in the first hangar deck, and the other one was in the third hangar deck. And on the starboard side, they had 1 deck edge elevator. Now they have, on the ship now, they've made 3 deck edge elevators and put a canted deck on it so they can fly planes out both sides. And then when they land them, they can land them over the side. Because what was used to happen was, when these planes used to come in for landing, when I was on it, they had a 20-foot barricade in case they missed the resting gear. And the last thing they could do to ditch was hit this barricade, because all the other planes would be parked up front. And I seen one time, when a plane come down and hit so hard, because it was training, a lot of these guys never flew off a carrier.
Yeah.
It hit so hard, bounced right up over the top of that thing, and we had a massive fire there a couple times where the planes hit into the, that's why they put the new canted flight deck onto the ship, because they can take them off both sides and they can park them on the side where they wouldn't be in the way of the other planes coming in.
Did the pilot survive the...
We had some, I'd see, well, you ask Jeannie, he's got a picture of one where the pilot got his head chopped off. You know, the canopy was getting out and he got hit. But other than that, you know, there's always fires aboard carriers.
Yeah.
You could read in that paper that magazine I just gave you, you see all the carriers where they lost people.
Sure. They say that was a very dangerous job, being on that flight deck.
It's the most dangerous job there is. Well, you know what happened one time? When I was on Mount 33, right in front of the captain's cabin, we had the War College aboard, and they were undecided whether to take the carriers out of operation or the battleships. So, I don't know if you remember, Putnam, head of Strategic Air Command, General.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Remember he ran for vice president one
yeah,
time?
Curtis LeMay.
That's him.
Mm-hmm.
This guy came out of the captain's import cabin, because we had congressmen and senators and admirals and generals and all these people. And they wanted to see how the carrier operated.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy comes out, you know, and he don't have his stars on his, you know, he was a 4-star general. He just come out with his khakis. So he's got a big cigar in his mouth, you know. And he starts to get his Zippo lighter out to light a cigar, and I says, "Sir," I didn't know if who he was.
Yeah.
I says, "Sir, I wouldn't do that if I were you." He says, "Why not?" I said, "You got a fueling station right up over your head." I said, "The smoking lamp is out throughout the ship. Didn't you get the word?" I didn't know he was a general,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, he said, "I'm glad." He said, "I'm glad you told me, because it would have been your rear end." I said, "No, it would have been all of ours." You know, right up over the top there was they were fueling aircraft.
Yeah.
And they always said, whenever they're fueling, the smoking lamp is out throughout the ship, you know. And if you got caught smoking, you had it.
Yeah.
And, well, anyway, I talked to him after that, you know, and he giggled a little bit. But he's the same guy when he was head of the Strategic Air Command.
Yeah.
He was the same guy who would go to all the installations around the world with divers and UDT men and all that there stuff. And like one time he came out over there in Gibraltar, and they tied a box on the anchor chain, because we used to have watches all around the ship. You know, they had chain watches and stuff like that. These guys these UDT guys, got underneath, tie a box and say, and then they call up and say, "We just blew up your ship," because they wanted you to be on, you know.
Yeah.
So one time they did that. When the captain pulled the chain up, when he had sea detail, the box was tied to the anchor chain. Then he knew that they were there. And they used to go to Port Leody, they used to go all over the world just to see if they could get in without being noticed and stuff like that. And that was something. But we were always on guard. We always had motor whaleboats out when we were at anchored.
Yeah.
We always had a crew in the water just to see if anybody was trying to get aboard or anything like that, you know. And it used to get cold. I remember one time we were in Gibraltar and we were outside the breakwater, and we just got anchored and everything. And so we have like a little holiday routine, you know, because we're doing all these drills all the time.
Yeah.
And I was jacking my gun out of battery because I had to take the new fire pin out and all that there stuff and everything. So I had my gun mount up at ready air like that off the side, and this Russian cargo ship goes by. And they reported to the captain of my ship that there's somebody training their gun mounts on the ship. And I wasn't even doing that. When they came to talk to me about that, I was underneath with my breech block was down, and I was changing the fire pin. I said I couldn't even move the gun at that position. You know what I mean? I tried to explain what was going on. I was just cleaning my breech, because I had to jack her out and drop the breech and get underneath and clean it, put a new pin in, and stuff like that, you know. And it wasn't my fault. I said they just trying to cause trouble, that's all. So we got out of that. But a lot of times we used to go in Gibraltar or one of the other countries where the Russians were, we always got in fights all the time. They just didn't like us.
What was your most interesting port of call?
One time when I went to, I had two. I went to a place called Naples, Italy. I went to a place called Pudalatone, it's a province. It's like Saratoga County here. And I went to visit where my father and mother were, or my father was born. And what happened was, the guy that used, when I was growing up, there's an old man that lived next door to me. His name was Raphael Migalazzi. And he bought my grandmother's farm when they came to this country. Then he came to this country, he worked for the state for 25 years, then he went back with his family. He left his family there. A couple of his sons came up here, they worked up here. But anyway, the rest of the family stayed behind, and he got a pension. So I went looking for him, because he knew the people I should know, you know. So I found the place, and this little old guy, he must have been in his 80s, and he's on his hands and knees, and he's working the garden. So I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hey, Raphael." And he said, "Oh," he said, "American soldier." And he said, "Soldado Americano." So I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know who I am?" Oh, he had the cataracts real bad, he couldn't see. So I said, "Francesco Capone." Oh, he got on his hands and he started crying. He said, "I should never come back here." He said, "All he do is work, 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 work." He's telling me. Now he's drawing a pension from the States. So he says, "Come on." He introduced me to the family. Then he takes me down on the main street, and he introduced me to all my second and third cousins.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Then we went to a place called Famiglia. That's right outside of Punta Ladrone. Everything's within walking distance once you get into these towns, you know. So there's a guy in a tree picking cherries. So I asked the guy, I asked him what his name was. He said, "Caputo." I said, "Really?" "Yeah." I said, "I'm from Saratoga." Because I knew he had connections, see. He said, "You know Joe Caputo?" That's Jeannie Curcel's cousins.
Oh, really?
I said, yeah, he's a good friend of my family and us, you know, we're all friends, we're all relatives. Because I even had an aunt that was married to, a great aunt was married to, wasn't a great aunt, I think, was married to a computer. That's how me and Jeannie are cousins. So anyway, he come down, he said, "Oh," he said, "you found the Raphael." I said, yeah. He says, asked me, I said, "Concetta, the Capone," because he remembered my grandmother. So we got talking and everything, you know, and then they take me back over to this other place where they had a little store in the bottom, and I slept upstairs. They had two twin little girls there. They were supposed to be distant relatives too. And I stayed there for about, I had this guy that he was Polish with me. He couldn't understand what was going on. But anyway, I explained everything to him, you know. So he gets back to the ship again. Then we went to a place called Palermo, a place called Bagheria. That's where my uncle lives. So I'm walking along. That's we were anchored at Syracuse. We had to go all the way around the mountain to the other side to get to Palermo. And my uncle used to have a shoe shop in Palermo during the Second World War and got blown out. So they all went to the hills, and he lived up there in a place called Bagheria. And that's a part of where the Godfather was filmed.
Corleone was the town.
Yeah, up in that neck of the woods. So anyway, when I went up there, I bought a bunch of T-shirts and different stuff that I could get aboard ship from different guys, you know. So I brought a whole bag of stuff, you know. And he said to me, "What are you doing that for?" You know, stuff like that. And I said, "Well, maybe the kids," had 4 cousins. "Maybe the kids could use some of this stuff, you know." He said, "Well, no." He introduced me to the guy that owned all that area. The guy said to me, he said, no. He says, "Come with me, I want to show you something." He worked for American Export up in the mountains. He showed me a warehouse. He had cartons and cartons of cigarettes and everything, you know, that come off ships, you know.
Yeah.
He said, He says, come on, he says, takes me to the stable. He says, pick yourself a horse. We're gonna go hunting. He gives me one of them Italian Beretta 12-gauge shotguns
Oh, yeah.
with the hammers on them.
Yeah.
And we went hunting for rabbits. We didn't get nothing, we just took a ride anyway,
Yeah.
you know. So he come back, he says, the next time you come and see me. And I said, yeah, I stay away from this guy, you know. I didn't go come and see him. But anyway, my uncle used to tell me, he said, you know, at night, when it gets dark, you don't go outside, he's going to me. You know, people don't understand in this country of ours where we're going. I know the difference between socialism and communism.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get in with these people overseas that don't have nothing, and you have people that have everything, there's two classes of people. They ain't like here, we got a middle class that trying to knock out.
Mm-hmm.
But over there, you got two classes of people. They have the rich and the poor. Now, I don't know if you ever been in European countries, right?
I've been to a few. I haven't been to Italy, though.
Well, I don't care if it's Italy, wherever, France, Greece, Spain, all them countries, they have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They have socialism. I hate to be talking about it, but it's true. People don't know what they're in for.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I spent my 4 years aboard this ship here. It treated me pretty good. I gained weight. And when I come out,
Now, did you consider staying in at all?
yes, I did. I was going to ship over. They asked us, the guys that are getting discharged, asked us if we want to extend for 1 year, because I was going to do it because it was going around the Horn, and I was going to get on the West Coast, you know. And I figure it'd take us 6, 7 months, you know. They'll pay me for the whole year, and they pay me where I got discharged
Mm-hmm.
home. But I didn't because my mother was sick, and I thought I'd better come home, and that's what I did.
What rank were you when you were discharged?
I was a gunner's mate, seaman first class. But rates were hard to get then because so many people were in there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to take these huge Safi courses. I don't know if you ever heard of
sure.
them. I used to
Yep.
take them all. I used to get good marks with them, but I couldn't uprate, you know, the guys were staying in, they weren't getting out to make room for other guys. They can only have so many rated guys,
Yeah.
you know. And gunner's mates and bosun mates, them guys didn't want to get out, most of them. Most of them guys were 20-year people.
Yeah.
Like electricians, stuff like that, you had a shot, because they could go out and get a job. But when I got out in 1954, it was just like it is now. There was no work. And if you remember, they had, you probably don't remember, they had the 2020 Club.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, 5220
Yeah,
they hit in World War II.
yeah, 5220, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And all we had was just that. And what I used to do, as you know, Tommy Simone, the
Mhm.
Undertaker,
Mm-hmm.
his father was Pat. And we used to be on the corner of Broadway and Church Street, where Dan's Soda Bar used to be. And those guys, after we got out of service, we used to hang out down there. And he used to come by with his hearse or station wagon, say, come out with me, you know, give you $5 to go pick up a body or somebody who broke their arm or something. Or else we were pallbearers. I was pallbearer for people I didn't even know.
Oh,
You know, we did things like that.
yeah.
And that 5220, that wasn't very much money.
No.
And I used to pick up jobs on the side, you know, and I-10 bar right down the street, a couple doors down from here. They used to have Jerry's restaurant. And I-10 bar right down the street here as a bartender. And I was going to take, I was going to training to be a mason and all that kind of stuff that paying out. But instead I got into the union. I'm still in the union,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been in since '48. And that's what I get my retirement from.
Construction work.
Construction work. I worked on even the building in the back here. you know, where they used to have the garage and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We built that. I
Oh,
worked
did
for a
you?
small contractor. I worked at the Saratoga High School. We built most of Skidmore College. I worked at the old campus, you know, the pink elephant they call it, that
Mhm.
building they're gonna rip down.
Yeah.
I remember when they started that, and my business agent called me up to go to work there. In the meantime, I already went to work for D.A. Collins, and I said to him, I says, I already got a job, but I know a guy that needs a job. So this Mike, that lived up the street from 139 Elm Street, I went over and got him, and I said, if you want to go to work, as long as your book is paid up, I said, go up to Skidmore and look for Swire Construction, and they'll put you to work. So Mike went there, and he worked up there, and they were digging out a foundation for that pink building, you know, the one dormitory.
Mhm.
And what happened was, they filled in an old foundation, and they were digging out the foundation. He got down in the hole, and the wall caved in on him, killed him.
Oh.
You know, but I mean, you can't get into them circumstances. You know, you got to use your own head. You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it made me feel bad because I was the guy that sent him on the job. Other than that, I worked on Skidmore College, Union College, St. Rose College, School of Pharmacy, the Medical Center. Down in Schenectady, I worked on Ellis Hospital. I worked on a lot of schools, police headquarters down in Albany, a lot of different buildings. I can't.
Let me just ask you, you mentioned you helped build the building behind the armory here.
Yeah.
It used to be where they stored the trucks and military
that's
vehicles.
yeah.
Now it's we store our artifacts there. Do you recall when that was built, roughly?
Have to be in 1956.
56.
Because I worked down at Caroline Street School for Oswald Construction, and they built the one over there on Division Street, the same outfit built both of them. And I think what happened was I got laid off from there, and I worked for John, can't even think of his last name now, he's gone. I remember buying his equipment, and I went did side jobs for myself too. John Nichols. There's three different Nichols in this in Saratoga, but this was old John Nichols. He was a contractor, and I worked for him until we built that building there. Then I went to other jobs, and I worked on that hotel on Broadway, the Hilton.
Oh yeah.
And what happened was, my granddaughter was over, my son was over in Germany, and the granddaughter was going to be born. So me and Marilyn took a flight out and spent, I don't know, a few weeks out in Germany. And when I came back to go to my job, the guy said to me, he says, I got somebody else in your place. So I didn't want to argue because I was a steward. I didn't want to argue with him. I just let him go with it. Then I went back out to West Milton, and that's where I retired from.
Yeah. Going back a little bit, this is interesting. If you want to talk about it on camera, do you want to talk about that day at the railroad station when the troops left to go to Alabama?
Oh yeah, I remember that day because I was 11 years old.
This was in 1940.
41.
41.
It was just before the Second World War started. This was in the summer months because all those guys had our short sleeve shirts. I was 11 years old, and the brakeman in the yard never give a signal or anything, and everybody was on the #1 track here. #2 track was the troops were, and had all my cousins and everybody that was going to Alabama for training. And this train came right down, right into the crowd. And my mother had 2 kids in the carriage, my brother and sister, and my other sister and I were standing alongside of her when this train came right on through and plowed right through the people. And good thing they had them cowl things on the front of that train,
Mhm.
like they used to have those. And a couple girls got pretty well banged up, cut up, you know, right around the wheels and stuff like that. That's because the guy down in the yard didn't do his job.
Mhm. And you were enlisted to help with the cleanup?
Yeah, when the guy was giving baskets off, help clean up, and
Mm.
you know, I mean, they were a terrible mess there.
Mm.
But my father was in the band, and you know, them doors into the old railroad station were that thick, and they tried to break the door down. My father's horn got all banged up and everything, you know, to try and get people off the tracks, you know.
Yeah.
But that was something to see, though. Everybody's looking for their kids and looking for, the, you know, their mothers and fathers and stuff like that, because we were all there. The
Yeah.
whole Saratoga was there. And it's the one that more people didn't get killed. And if you go down the archives, I don't know, they should have had something like this in them days. All my cousins and friends and everybody, the names in the book. I never seen it, but I heard that you do have people's names in the archives or something like that. It went through Company L, the 105th Infantry
yes.
Division,
Yep.
Saratoga Springs, New York.
Yep. We did an interview several years ago with, you probably knew him, Ellsworth Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was with the unit.
Well, I want to tell you about Ellsworth Jones. He's gone now, but I can talk about him anyway. I went aboard, let's see what happened. Me and Jeannie Corsell, it was after I came back from Germany when my granddaughter was born. We just flew into town. I was just putting my bag down in the house. We just came from Germany, and the telephone rang. And Gene Corsell said to me, "Hey, Dice." And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" He said, "Hey, you want to take a trip?" I said, "Where?" He said, "Pennsylvania." I said, "For what?" He said, "Well, the Knights of Club is sponsoring a bunch of, sponsoring a busload of Boy Scouts to go to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, to go aboard the USS Saratoga, CV-60. So I says, "What do I have to bring?" He just bring your, you know, change of clothes and stuff like that and a lunch. He said, "I'll see you tomorrow morning." That's when Knights of Columbus was where the Salvation Army is now. So I says, "Gee," I said, "I got my bags all packed, all ready to go." I said to Marilyn, I says, "Is it all right if I go to Philadelphia? We're going to go aboard the Midway and spend the weekend." Or not the Midway, but Saratoga. So she said, "Go ahead." So anyway, the next morning we get up, got a busload of kids, and we had four, count myself, older guys, are going to take care of the kids, you know. So he said, "You'd be a good guy to go because you know more about the carrier, you know." I said, "All right, I'll go." So he goes to Philadelphia. So now he gets off the bus. Now this ensign's there, and he's taking names, seeing that we're all there. We're in the Navy Yards. So as we're walking down the pier, I'm saying to this ensign, I says, "You know, that's the Columbus, that's the Pittsburgh." He said, "How do you know that?" I said, "By the numbers." I said, "I knew every number." He says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "There's a Wisconsin." And I said to Jeannie, "BB-63. I said, "That's your old ship." He says, "Yeah," because he spent 2 years on a Wisconsin. He came on a Midway with me, you know. So anyway, they had a guard that wouldn't let you go up the ramp on that ship. So I said to Jeannie, I went over to talk to the guy and says, "Hey, Corporal, we used to serve," or Jeannie said, "We used to serve on that ship there, and I like to go aboard just to look around," because he was a welder aboard ship.
Gene was.
He was in damage control. So I says to Jeannie, I said, "You sure you want to go?" They had to move the barbed wire and all that stuff to get us aboard. So we went aboard, and he showed me different spot welds that he did on the decks and different stuff like that. So he was happy to get aboard that ship, because he spent 2 years on it. He went over to Korea with that ship.
Oh, okay.
But you know what I wanted to say, is that ship that I was on, it used to be a CVB. When I was on it, it was a carrier vessel battleship hull. During the Second World War, when they were building the battleships, they had 3 extra hulls and keels for battleships. So somebody come up with a brainstorm and says, let's put a flat top on top of that thing and make a carrier out of it. It's the same thing as a battleship below the main deck, except for that 16-inch guns. And the rest is flat deck for planes. So that's what they did. That's where the B came from. But when I went this time, it was a CV, because what happened was, when it was a CVB, then a bigger ship came out, like the Abraham Lincoln and all the bigger ships. Then it was a CVA. It was an attack carrier. Then now that it's in it's a museum, they made it a CV because it's smaller. Well, when I was on, it was the biggest one in the world. You know what I mean? You know, a couple other things that happened that I never mentioned was one time during the Second World War, the United States captured this German ship. You can refuel and replenish at the same time. And the United States was using it. And one time, when I fired the ship-to-ship communications over to the other ship, I was on the starboard wing of that ship. And I noticed that ship had to come alongside of us. And what happened was, the ship got so close to us, it ripped our Sector 3 gun mounts right off the deck. And when I seen that coming close like that, I grabbed the commander and my second, the guy with the ball of string, went over on the port side of the wing, on the other side of the pilot house. And it ripped all the gun mounts, the after gun mounts, Sector 3, behind where the smokestack is in the back, knocked them all right out, because them gun tubs laid close to the water's edge, you know. And Jeannie just came aboard, and he's one of the guys that torched them, and they dropped them over in the ocean after we got through refueling and stuff. That was one thing that we did that really got me nervous. I mean, that was a big ship. I got a picture of that ship home, a German ship. Then we had another incident that, you know, we were losing planes over in the ocean and stuff like that. Guys would go out too far, run out of gas or fuel, they'd dump. You'd be surprised. We had this one 2-engine job. It was a AJ1, and that was one that, if we had to use the bomb, that's what we used. That there was a 2-engine job with jet. We had a lot of, when I was first in there, it was all props. Then after, we had the F2H2 Banshees, the Panthers, the Pogo, you know, they were going to see how many, you know, stacked planes like this, the Pogo planes, they used to call them. And they used to take off like that and straighten out and stuff like that. And we were more or less like an experimental ship sometimes. Like the Mississippi, USS Mississippi. They used to test all the guns, the new guns and missiles that come out. And it was a World War I ship, they used it.
Wow.
But we had a lot of things going on in them days. You didn't know if we were going to start a third World War or what the hell was going on. And we had problems. We were more secure then than we are now. Now, can you imagine, we have a military, you know, you join the military and everything, voluntary service and stuff. Now, how many times can these guys go overseas?
Oh, I know it is.
I want to tell you, I feel so bad because it's the law of average that gets them.
Yeah.
You know, you go over there 3 or 4 times, and these guys are trying to kill you.
Sooner or later, they'll succeed.
Yep.
Now, you brought some photographs. Do you want to show us those and explain when and where they were taken?
Yes. This picture was taken down in San Diego, where my ship now is a museum.
Mm-hmm.
And these are 3 buddies of mine. I still get in touch with them. And we spent a week together down in San Diego, and we put the ship in down there for being a museum.
Okay.
This is a picture of the ship that I was on. It's a little different than it was before.
Yeah.
Because they put 2 extra deck edge elevator and put a new canted flat deck on it. When I was on it, it was just a straight deck.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Let's see where. Well, I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, I can zoom right in on it.
All right, this is a 5-inch 54. This is one of the mounts that was next to the mount that I was used to.
Okay.
That's a 5-inch. This is after we got hit. One of the gun mounts that
Oh, okay.
we had to cut and dump in the ocean. You can see where the
Oh, yeah.
barrels are messed up.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the 4 of us with me in the back.
Okay, I'm getting a little glare. Just tilt it a little bit. Yep, that's good right there. Okay, what are the names of those fellas?
Well, this guy here is Don McGalliard, Torrielli, and Dicey.
Okay.
This is that one of the parades we had for Flag Day. There's John Natal, Dicey, and Gene Corsell.
Okay.
This is another picture of it.
All right.
At 72, I graduated from high school, and this is a disc of the whole graduation.
All right.
I don't know what I got in here. I couldn't find the other ones. Huh? You don't? I don't know. Oh. This is me and my wife on the flight deck of USS Midway.
Okay.
Now, I want to say
Just
something.
hold that back towards you a little more. Towards you. And that way it's easier for me to zoom in on it. Otherwise it gets blurry for some reason.
Okay?
Okay, yeah, it's about as good as I can get it.
Okay, now, this picture was taken in San Diego,
Uh-huh.
and my buddies were with me, and I says to my buddy, I says, see that admiral up there making a speech? And he says, yeah. I said, I know that guy. And he said to me, he said, you know everybody. He said, we're in California. I said, all right. I said, wait till they come over here. I said, see that captain? I know that captain, 4-striper. And he said to me, what, do you know everybody down here? I said, yeah. So what happened was, the admiral comes over, and I said to my wife, get the camera out. So I tapped the admiral on the shoulder, and I said, Admiral, sir, I'd like to ask you a question. He says, yeah. He says, I says, where'd you take your nukes at? He says, oh, you never heard of the place. I said, really? Try me. So my buddies listen, you know. He said there was a little town upstate, no, and she never heard of the place. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, try me. He said, well, I says, did you ever stop at the corner of Geyser Road and Balsam Spa to get a coffee before you went to school? He looked at me, he says, yeah. I said, did you work at the Kesselring site and learn your nukes? He looked at me, he says, yeah. My buddy's like, I said, I retired from there, and I showed him my ID card, you know. So the captain comes over. I says, I remember you. You were an ensign the last time I knew, you know, like that. I said, you took your nukes at Kesselring site? He's out of Washington, these two guys now.
Uh-huh.
He says, yeah. He said, I took my nukes there. He says, I said, well, I was one of the trainers. I said, you know, suiting up and getting in a reactor and all that kind of stuff. My buddy said to me, I'm not going to challenge you no more. Same thing happened when we went to Germany. My wife and I ran out of film. And we goes to this drugstore. This German guy's at the counter, and I says, told the guy what I wanted. The guy goes, oh, I got it, okay. Give me the film, you know, and this guy comes from behind in the storeroom. And he comes over, I'm not running out of film, am I? You're not running out of film, are you?
Oh, no, no.
So anyway, this guy comes from the storeroom. He comes around, he says, are you people from New York? I said, yeah. He says, you know, he said, I went to school in New York. I said, you did? He says, yeah. I said, what'd you do on your vacation? He said, I worked at Aqueduct. I said, you did? I said, doing what? He says, working horses. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, so did you ever go to Saratoga? He says, yeah. He said, he had lived on Union Avenue.
Oh, my God.
I says, really? He says, yeah. I said to my wife, this guy's from Union Avenue. He lived in Saratoga. So anyway, we talked a while, you know. I said, you only live a couple minutes from where I live, you know. I said, I live on Geyser Road. He said, oh, he said, close. He said, you know what I want to do? He says, lunchtime, I want to take you across the street and buy you guys lunch. So he took us across the street and bought us lunch. And we talked and talked, you know, and I told him about my brother, worked at the track. He was up there 30-some years, and he knew my brother, he knew my brother and all, because my brother took care of them places, you know, up there. So I said, we got talking and everything. He says, you know what? He said, drop by again. He said, we'll go out and have dinner, you know, like that, you know, just to see somebody,
Sure.
you know. So me and a couple days later, Marilyn and I walked down this Walkenstrasse in Germany, and they had stores that had stuff from all over the world. You couldn't drive there, you had to walk. It's a walking thing. And so I said to Marilyn, are you hungry? She says, yeah. I said, let's stop at this Italian place and get something to eat. So they had the university was close by. So guys they're ready for their siesta. They usually have it from, was it 1 to 3 or something like that? So we're trying to get in, and the guy's locking the door. I said, wait a minute. I said, we want something to eat, you know. I said to the guy, Capisci Italiano? Oh, yeah, come on in. He's kicking the kids out, and he locks the door after her and I gets in there, and we're talking, you know. We sat down and ate. He wouldn't charge us or nothing. Put a bottle of wine on the table and everything. And he'd say to me, you think you can get me to the United States? He's going, you know. I said, I don't think so. But, you know, it was fun, you know, going around meeting people that surveyed around where you came from.
Sure. Let me ask you, how do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
Well, I'm more responsible for things I do.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be anyway. Sometimes I mess up. But, you know, you learn. You get batted around a few times, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time when I was a kid, and I was on Beekman Street, and I was always tall and skinny. And people used to pick on me all the time. They call it bullying now. I couldn't go home to cry to my father, you know. So this one kid, he was bigger than me, you know. He used to see me walking to school. He'd come and hit me on the back of the head or something like that and push me off the curb, you know, stuff like that. So I was sort of scared of this guy. So one day, me and my two cousins are walking down, and this guy comes across the street, and he starts bullying me. So my two cousins said to me, if you don't fight him, even if you get beat up, if you don't fight him, we're going to kick the hell out of you, you know? So I had to do one thing or the other. I either had to take a beating or get beat anyway. So this guy always said, knock the stick off my shoulder. And I says, all right. I said, I'm going to have to do it, right? Even if I get beat up. So I give him a couple whacks and he went down. Well, that kid didn't move. They had to call, I was only in the 4th grade. They had to call the ambulance, take him to the hospital. And that night, I'm over at my uncle's house, and the 4 boys are there with me, and his father pulls up in the car. He wants to get on, you know, beat me up. The father, he was a Mason. He had hands on him, you know. My oldest cousin said to me, get in the back of the line. He said to this guy, you come on this porch here, and we'll take care of you. We were all kids. He got in his car, boom. So now I went to work for Peter Keywood when we did a relocation job here in Saratoga on the railroad. The boss, his name was Capone. He was the Eastern guy for this outfit out of Massachusetts, Perini Corporation. They were the biggest in the world. They did work overseas and everything. So this guy his name was Capone. He was in charge of all the Eastern Coast jobs. So they made me foreman over the Masons. This guy had to work under me, this father, you know. And he was saying, but he's only an apprentice Mason, he's my boss. And we made him the boss of you guys. So he gave me a truck, and I put the guys on different bridges and columns and stuff like that. And whenever they need anything, I go get it for them and everything, you know. But he couldn't get over it that the guy made me the foreman, and I was only an apprentice.
Yeah. Now, did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, I belong to VFW, ITAM vets. I used to belong to the Korean War veterans, but I'm going to get back into it because when I was in there, when I got sick with the colon cancer, and I wound up having sepsis and peritonitis and wasn't going to make it, I didn't pay my dues, so I'm going to have to pay my dues. I do a lot with the Elks Club. Well, I was telling you about the Elks Club. We had these guys come in from Veterans Hospital.
Yeah.
And I was one of the guys who would sit in and talk to these guys about different things, you know.
Yeah.
So there's one guy over here, he says to me, he said, Mr. Capone, are you going to be here for Christmas party? I says, yeah, if they invite me. He said, well, if you come, I'll be here. You know, these guys are in wheelchairs and stuff like that, and they were telling me all their problems and everything. And I went along with them. I talked to each one of them. There was only one guy in the whole group that seemed like he just didn't want to talk, so I just let him go. I didn't want to bother with him. But I do things like that. We used to do a lot of that before I got sick. You know, go to different places and go to dinners and stuff like that with the veterans and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I lost 50 some odd pounds when I was wearing a bag for quite a while. and I had that sepsis and peritonitis. You know what happened? I was in the hospital. My
We got
wife,
about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, I'm doing too much talking. I was in a hospital, and Marilyn and her girlfriend came up from West Virginia. They just left the hospital at night, and I was telling them, Dr. Cuff, my heart doctor, he told me that they're going to release me tonight or tomorrow morning. So I said, bring my workout pants and a shirt and stuff like that, because I'm going to be released tomorrow. Well, after she left, all of a sudden I start feeling funny. And I got the phone, I could hardly pick up the phone. I got the phone and I called her up and I says, Marilyn, you better get here. I think I'm gonna die tonight. I said, I'm really in bad shape. So right away she came up to the hospital. She called the nurse first. They came in and getting me ready to go down the operating room again. So she come up there and everything, they had operated. I had 4 operations.
Jeez.
And all on kind of the doctor, when he stitched my colon together, he didn't do a very good job.
Well, at least you're here.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for your interview.